This is the first webinar of 2023. We're certainly excited to have you back to the Chase webinar series. We have a great lineup for this year and super excited for this topic, which is 2023 trends of the workplace. It's obviously a very hot topic, and hence somebody registered for this. Just as a side note, this is not a CEU accredited course for those that were looking that do look for CEU credits. However, our next one is, so you might want to go to our website and see that. But this is going to be a 30 to 35 minute presentation, and super excited to have Roopa from the Global Furniture Group to present this hot topic. We were going to hold the questions at the end, so if you have any questions, you can either send them in the chat to everyone, or send them in the chat directly to myself, or just be brave and speak up when it comes time at the very end. Like I said, our next webinar is actually a CEU, and it's going to be on February the 16th. So 2 weeks from now is our next one, and it's a BIFMA CEU accredited course. So it's actually going to be a very exciting one for those that are interested in that. And it's called Why Standards Matter. But now I'm going to introduce Roopa to everyone. Roopa studied kinesiology and psychology at McMaster University, where she learned the power of combining knowledge of the human body through anatomy and physiology, biomechanics, and understanding the psychology and sociology of human behavior. What sets her apart is her ability to understand the needs of both employees and businesses, and her ability to align workplace strategies and wellness to ensure success in both areas. So we're super excited to have Roopa. Thank you so much, Roopa, from the Global Furniture Group, joining us here. On a side note, everybody, if you could get your phones ready, because we are going to utilize the Mentimeter tool for getting live feedback as we address some of these interesting questions and topics. But Roopa, it's your day today, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Danny. Hi, everyone. I hope you're warmer than I am here. It's like minus 500 in Toronto. Even Ottawa is not as cold as this today, I think. But tomorrow it's supposed to be minus 29, and I'm not going anywhere. So hopefully it's way warmer for you guys. Thanks for joining. I know there's a lot of buzz around this topic, and this is only the tip of the iceberg for all the information out there. And just as Danny said, this is meant to be a 30 to 35 minute session, because I think we're all tired of listening for an hour, especially over lunch, while we're trying to learn and eat at the same time. So the way that I set up this presentation is for it to be really interactive, because the one thing that's really unique about workplace trends is that we all have an opinion on it, and everybody has a thought, or the way they think things should happen, or the way they hope the trends will play out. And so just with all of us here, we're going to have multiple perspectives on it. And then you layer in an organizational perspective, which adds even another layer of complexity, which is why everyone seems to be asking, what's next? What's happening here? What's going to be happening in the next year? Where are companies headed by industry? Where are companies headed by whatever other group that you want to assign to look at that? So this is, again, just more of a tip of the iceberg, because this is such a complex topic. And so I'm just going to share my screen. And Danny, if you could let me know when that pops up.
All right, it's thinking. There it is. Yeah.
Okay, so in theme with the technology, I was introduced to this great tool called Mentimeter. And so if you have your phone out, now would be a great time, because there's going to be at least 6 to 7 questions where I would love your feedback and your interaction, so that we can gauge what everybody is thinking or feeling. And so it's www.menti.com. And the code is 64055215. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to get that going.
Feel free to throw out some hearts there if you like. Just click the heart button. Yep. There we go.
That's nice to see. Okay, is everybody good? Maybe we can put that in the chat as I'm presenting, in case someone hops on a little bit later. All right, I'm going to
maybe just mention the code again. The code is at the top of the screen, but for those that maybe don't have the screen right in front of you, maybe you could say it again then, Roopa, so that others can punch it in.
If you go to www.menti.com and use the code 64055215.
Perfect.
All right, we get to get started. Great, okay. So I'll be toggling back and forth between these two screens. So we'll start off right here. What's new in workplace trends? Now, this is an ever evolving question because there's always going to be something new. And trends emerge often and they offer insights that help us to provide value to our clients and having conversations. And I think the best thing that we can do is have the conversations because each organization's trends that they follow or choose to not adopt are going to be different than another organization. So let's get into it. Now, again, there are many workplace trends out there. There's trends and predictions available. And I tried to focus the research in on the Canadian market. And by doing that, I'm just prefacing the research a little bit because we have a behemoth of a country just south of us that does a lot more data gathering at a more updated frequency. So the data I'm sharing with you is Canadian specific. It might not sound as recent as what you may read from an American article, but it is still telling of where we're at right now. So just adding that little bit of disclaimer that we have to search a little bit extra for Canadian specific insights. So currently in the Canadian market, despite recession worries, according to a report by Robert Half, which is titled Demand for Skilled Talent, and this report analyzed more than 240,000 positions across Canada in Q2 and Q3 of 2022. And the following information for the hiring plans of companies were found between July and December of 2022. So not that long ago, but still pretty telling as to where we are from a Canadian market. So these were interesting. 50% of the surveyed companies are hiring for vacated positions. 40% of companies are hiring for new roles. 8% are freezing all hiring, and only 2% are eliminating positions. So we hear a lot in the news, and I guess what each of our algorithms are, those are the headlines that follow us. But sometimes when we step outside of that and take a look at some of these pieces of research and these reports that many organizations are doing Canada-wide, it sets the tone a little bit of what's potentially actually happening. And so whether the workplace is virtual, remote, in person, or a blend, employers are still expanding retention strategies to help minimize turnover. And the trends we will review today are some of the considerations to discuss with clients and those individuals tasked with reevaluating space, attraction and retention strategies, and overall organizational direction. So with that, we're going to jump into a poll. It's our very first poll before I share the first trend. Oh no. Okay. Oh, if you hadn't gotten this, I didn't realize there's a QR code. So this makes it even easier. If you haven't gotten it right now, the QR code is up on the screen. Okay, so here is your first question. I hope everyone can see this. Okay. This is your first question. Which of the following are the top 4 retention strategies for Canadian companies? So if you can pick 4 that you think are the top 4, I'll give you a minute to answer that. So I'll just give you another 30 seconds to answer. We're at 13 responses right now. All right, everyone got their answers in? Okay, so I see increased compensation, enhanced professional development, remote jobs at 23%, recognition programs, promoting within the organization, increased paid time off, lighter work and lighter workloads. So I will hit enter to show correct. Okay. So these are the top 4. And in the actual order, it's increased compensation was actually at 45%, remote jobs at 45%, recognition programs at 40%, and enhanced professional development at 38%. So we, I think for the most part, got those right. Great. Let me go back to this, just bear with me. Okay, so this was the question. And so now you can see the answers. Now the results of this come from a survey which multiple responses were permitted from participants. And the participant pool included employees in the administrative, customer support, finance and accounting, human resources, legal, marketing and creative, and technology professionals. So that's why we have more than, the total is more than 100 because they were able to select more than one at a time. And this is again from the Robert Half Employment Trends Demand for Skilled Talent Report. So this is what the top 4 retention strategies for Canadian companies were. My next question for you is what employees are looking for. So bear with me 1 second, I'm going to go back to Mentimeter here. Okay, so we talked about what employers are doing. Now let's talk about employees. Which of the following are the top 5 factors that Canadian employees are currently looking for in an employer? So take a minute to think about that and submit your answer.
A couple of them are jumping out there, hey?
Yeah, seriously, it's interesting to see all of this populate. And give you guys 30 more seconds. All right, so, oh, there we go. Okay. So it looks like everybody selected at least one of them for each answer. And so work-life balance seems to be the top 1. Attractive salary and benefits at number 2. And we have opportunities for promotion and then job security and pleasant work atmosphere tied. So I'm going to show you the correct responses. So to contrast the top retention strategies of Canadian companies, we can now see what Canadian employees are looking for in employers. So there's some alignment here. So I'll go back to the PowerPoint so you can see the answers here. So this is again, this is from a different report, and it's from the Randstad Employer Brand Research in 2022, which surveyed over 3,500 Canadians in 2022 with a diversity of gender, employment status, region, age, education, and generation. So it's interesting because We have employees looking for attractive salary and benefits. And the retention strategy, the top one, just to revisit that, the top retention strategy for employers is increased compensation. For employees are looking for a work-life balance. And the second strategy that employers are using are remote jobs as a strategy. Job security and pleasant work atmosphere and good training kind of bunch into and align with the recognition program and enhanced professional development that employers are using as a strategy. So you can see that there is some alignment, which becomes interesting because it looks like employers are more in tune with what employees are looking for, because that attraction and retention is an issue right now. So today we are going to talk about the following trends. We're going to talk about flexible work, employee recognition, connection and culture, and the role of technology. So a recent survey from Colliers Canada found that 61% of Canadian employers are using a hybrid work model, and that's down 5% from 2021. This survey polled more than 350 employers, and it also found that only 37% have employees working in the office full-time. So this is an across Canada survey. So flexible work not only means a blend of working remotely and working in office, but also includes working hours that are outside of that 9 to 5 traditional model. And flexible work also ends up translating to flexible workspaces. So you see, I have a lot of photos up here that are indicative of a lot of the places that we're seeing people doing work. And there's more examples of where you can do work outside of this, but I think these are photos of doing work that have become normalized now, as opposed to where we were at maybe 4 years ago. And so flexible work does translate into flexible workspaces. And on average, the demand for employers to have flexible workspaces has doubled since before the pandemic. So not only is flexible work important, but the space needs to align. How are we all designing for that in the office and outside of the office, in places where we might go to have a coffee, in places where we might vacation, places where we might be traveling to. Just a side note, if any of you have been using Airbnb over the past 2.5 years, one thing that I noticed was they put up very clearly whether there's a work environment within the rental unit. So they'll say fully functioning desk and workstation available as part of this rental, which I never noticed that being so prevalent 4 or 5 years ago, which is interesting. Further, there's a recent report from Cisco System Inc., and it found that hybrid work has improved the overall well-being of 68.8% of Canadians, and up to 75% of Canadians report being happier because of flexibility. Lastly, 71% of Canadians reported a better work-life balance. So the results of this same Cisco report found that a majority of employees doubt their workplace is fully prepared for a hybrid working future, with only 20.2% indicating that their employer is very prepared for it. That's a huge misalignment. So I think really for all of us on this call today, that's a huge opportunity. So if people are feeling like the environments don't line up with how they're working, there's a huge change that needs to happen with that. And so if this trend of flexible work will be becoming permanent holds true, and there's overwhelming data as well as personal experiences from all of us, I'm sure, and stories to support this trend, it will be important to understand how organizations are strategizing, planning, and designing for flexibility. And one thing is certain, the expectations of employees has significantly changed, and employers need to identify and prioritize which changes to make. It's time for another poll. Okay, so this one you're going to type in your answers. So I have a question for you here is, the question is, what are some ways to show employees that they matter? So take a few minutes and we'll get some, we'll wait for everybody's answer on that. I'll give you guys a freebie. Good coffee is one. Good coffee is a way to show employees that they matter. Ooh, free trips, yep. Gift cards, monetary incentives. Healthy snacks, one-on-ones. Make them feel heard, yep. Activities together, progress, flexible hours, that's a big one. Specific recognition, more money, bonuses, change management, room to present ideas, yep, time off. Snacks, yeah, snacks are important. Good chair, work reviews, recognition letter, collaborative team environment, yep. Give you just another 20 seconds here to add in any more ideas. So the bonuses, flexible hours, recognition, time off, that's pretty in line with what we talked about earlier with what employees are looking for. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. So this is a great word cloud that really captures what we're going to talk about next. So trend number 2 is showing employees they matter, and it's going to become important. So this second trend ties back in with the retention strategies we discussed earlier. Recognition programs were found to be the third most important retention strategy. So why does the employee experience matter? According to Gallup's workplace and employee experience research, all of the individual moments of an employee's experience play a role in how a worker feels about an employer's purpose, brand, and culture. And these feelings directly affect employee engagement, retention, performance, and development. So these are the soft things that you can't always measure the output or the metric for, but these are the things that foundationally really matter, especially as we're talking about that whole attraction and retention and building a culture. And if we just think about our own experiences over the past 3 years, being out of sight under lockdown guidelines, however severe they were in your geography, being out of sight was happening more often than we were used to. You may have seen your teams more frequently, but maybe interacting with clients, maybe interacting with colleagues that were at other offices wasn't as common. And so that out of sight was more, we were out of sight more than we were within sight, because the only time you were within sight was when you were either in person with that individual or you had your camera on. And so this being out of sight under lockdown guidelines have had a significant effect on how employees feel, on how they feel that they're being recognized and appreciated. And showing employees they matter can be done in a number of different ways. An important question that I've been asking clients is, how are you showing your employees that they matter? And that tells me so much about what they're doing within their space and how they're moving forward. And one impactful approach is rethinking the workspace and providing a variety of work points with ergonomic considerations, appropriate amenities, and spaces to interact, work, and focus, along with all of the things that you all had written out in the survey. So it's time for another question. So this one, you're going to pick one option. And the question is, how would you describe your work productivity while working from home? Challenging, really great, good. Nobody selected awful yet, which is good.
It's a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah, good sign. I'll give you another 30 seconds here to get your answers in. Okay, that is good to know. Oh. Okay, so this is going to be followed up with another poll question, so keep your phones out. Question 5 is, how would you describe how connected to colleagues you feel or felt while working from home? Just gonna go back to this one so I can write down your results. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so if I go back to our trends, we can talk about this. So we went through these 2 questions. So this brings us to our 3rd trend, which is connection will drive workplace culture. Now, in a recent Angus Reid survey, 750 Canadians were asked to describe their experience of working from home and work productivity. So I asked all of you the same questions that were in the Angus Reid survey. So results found that 22% of Canadians report that their work productivity suffers at home. And interestingly enough, it was found that women aged 18 to 34 were more likely to report their work productivity as challenging or awful. So if we just take a look at what you guys had said for your work productivity, 36% of you said it was really great, 43% said it was good, and only 21% of you said it was challenging, and nobody said it was awful, so that's good. In this same survey, Canadians were asked to describe their experience of working from home and feeling connected to colleagues. And the results showed that Canadians are split on the effect that working from home has on office cohesion. Half of the Canadians that were surveyed said they felt solid connections with their colleagues, and half actually felt the opposite. So with the results that we got from the Mentimeter, 43% of you said that you felt your connection was good with colleagues. 43% of you said it was challenging, and only 14% said it was awful. So it's pretty, I would say it's pretty close to even between good and challenging, with which lines up with what the survey results showed. And interestingly, men are more likely than women to be in the latter group, so feeling not connected. And those early on in their career, more so than older Canadians. It was found that 57% of men aged 18 to 34 say feeling connected to their colleagues from their home office is challenging or awful. And it was also found that Canadians are more likely to feel connected to their work, but still 41% say they felt out of the loop when it came to work projects, which is really interesting when we talk about connection and collaboration. And so there are many ways that space itself can support connection and workplace culture. And it's important to consider what the in-person spaces look like for individuals and teams to connect. At a high level, this includes the type of collaboration, the informal and formal interactions, and the ratio of each. This slide brings us to our fourth and last trend, which is technology will play a pivotal role in workplace culture. This sounds very obvious. Technology has a huge role to play, but with what I was saying earlier, technology still has a long way to go in terms of establishing itself as a pivotal player in workplace culture. Workplace productivity and workplace culture are two different things here. So while the importance of technology in work is glaringly evident, it is the role that technology will place in workplace culture that this trend focuses on. So collectively, we've seen the rapid learning curve that organizations, even the most traditional models, had to face in March of 2020. And for many of us, there were features of our existing technology we didn't even know we had. And then these features quickly became indispensable as we tried to do our work. Now we're at a horizon of understanding how to utilize technology as a purposeful tool to connect to our teammates regardless of location. As we've learned, there's still relevance to physical space, and individuals have a need to connect to peers and colleagues. For those of us in the business of interior spaces, this is an opportunity to help clients outfit physical spaces to support the technology and quality of connection. From the acoustics to the shape of the table, where the camera is positioned, what analog and digital tools are utilized, to lighting. There are many ways to help create a more seamless connection and collaboration equity for all. And so this brings us to our summary. We talked about flexible work becoming permanent, recognizing employees and how much of a factor that plays, connection and culture actually driving work forward, and the role of technology helping to shape workplace culture. So that is all I had for you, and I'll open up the floor to any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roopa. That's again well delivered, and really interesting to see the, that is quite current, the studies, of course, just some months ago, which is I think still real time of kind of what we're seeing and experiencing right now. Yeah. So neat to see how the from the studies there versus the sampling on this call here, and how there's a lot of alignment even amongst that. So does anyone have anyone wants to be brave to speak up and ask Roopa any pointed questions on these topics? I have a couple of things written down actually that I, just obviously the, employee recognition, is a significant one, offering lots of flexibility. What we're seeing as well when we're talking to client groups is the challenge of integrating technology, so it really makes it as seamless as possible in those hybrid meetings. Major trend around technology and the finding the appropriate technology.
I see there's a question that just popped up. Is there a study about the value of art in the workplace? I am sure it exists. I will keep an eye out for one because that's a really good question. It validates that need to have visual interest and intrigue within the spaces that you're spending time in. If it's equivalent to anything that we've seen and read about biophilic design in the workplace, I can make the assumption that art does matter in the workplace, but good point.
And have you read anything, Rupa, or seen anything on these studies around, people, again, a lot of people that I know even have moved away and worked remote from a city that they think is a better suited city for themselves, and then now obviously being physically separated from where their employer is. But now, of course, things getting back to hybrid and the need to get into the office, whether it be two days a week or whatever. Is there any comments or trends that you're seeing on any of that topic of people needing to actually move back to the city again?
Yeah, it's so interesting. There's so much variability in that. So many people left the metropolitan centers and made that jump. I've heard stories of people being really happy they left. I've heard stories and read things about people regretting that decision. I would say the more general theme is that because that move was made, they now have to line up with what they have to create a lifestyle based on that decision, because coming back, I haven't seen people moving back from where they were. Some people are really happy with it. Some people are regretting it. So it's so all across the board.
Yeah, there's an interesting question on the chat there. What is my experience as a business owner at Chase Office Interiors? Which is a very valid question. So we actually, we were fortunate in terms of finding some certain skill sets of roles that didn't require in person to be able to hire from out of province. So we've hired some people that have been, whether it be out of city or out of province, to where our offices are located, which has been nice to have that flexibility. But all in all, again, for us, hiring people in the greater Vancouver area and being reasonable in terms of the face time of us getting together face to face on a semi-regular basis and not requiring it 9 to 5 Monday to Friday has been kind of important, offering that flexibility for sure.
Yeah. There was one thing I wanted to add to Danny, the earlier question, and just in general, I think there's a misconception that you can do 100% remote for your whole job. And if we look at businesses that were fully remote even before the pandemic, there's multiple companies that have that model where they can acquire talent from different geographies, and that's great. But even those companies that function as fully remote have a cadence in which they gather in person, whether that's quarterly, whether that's annually, whatever that is, they make it a point to actually gather in person at one point or multiple points throughout a year. So there is still importance to meeting in person, because that's a whole other presentation, but there is still value to that. And I think the best thing we can look at are the organizations that were truly remote prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, and I'll expand on that in the sense that Chase Office Interiors, we got together for our Christmas celebration party and brought people anybody that out of province, out of the city, all came together, and it was invaluable having that FaceTime with each and every person on the team. So just can't replace that, in my opinion.
Only so many Zoom cocktail calls we can do.
Remember those? Oh yes. Who else wants to be brave and either speak up or share on the chat what you're curious about on this topic?
Yes, Thad from Chase. I had a question. I mean, from your experience and connecting with companies, like, I was just curious if you had ever come across a statistic if hybrid companies still lack a strategy around hybrid offices. I was just curious, or your thoughts on that.
I have thoughts. The statistics are still all across the board. I would say the organizations that are creating their designs and their strategy based on the compass of workplace culture are going to have a more intentional and successful plan. If you're just creating hybrid for the sake of it, I don't know how well that's going to work for you or how invested in that you are. So the one thing I talk about with everyone is, okay, you want to make these changes, but ultimately, what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to improve your cohesion? Are you trying to improve a sense of camaraderie? Are you trying to rebuild the community that's within your organization? Whatever that is, or are you transitioning from in office to fully remote? There's no wrong answer. But if you don't have that compass pointing north of your workplace culture, whether that's aspirational in repair mode or maintenance mode, if you don't have that sense of workplace culture, it's really hard to create something that's cohesive and in line with accomplishing the same goal. So the companies that I have seen are doing that work up front. They're evaluating what they want their workplace culture to look like, what they want their employee experience to be, and everything that falls under that. Those are the organizations that are actually attaching intention to how they're going to work going forward. So it always comes down to workplace culture.
Yeah, there's always that old saying, culture beats strategy, right? Culture beats strategy every single time. So it always comes down to people and the connection with people.
Exactly.
Very cool. Any other questions? Come on, don't be shy.
Roopa, I do have a burning question based on your response. Todd from Chase again. I was curious because, you know, I do know a lot of people who work in tech and other industries, and I was curious, do hybrid teams walk a fine line between productivity and exhaustion?
My quick answer to that is it depends. It depends what they're trying to accomplish. Do hybrid workers fall on the line of exhaustion? If you don't have boundaries and your workplace culture wants you on all the time, it's very easy to be on all the time. If that boundary doesn't come from the top down, then it's not there. So again, it goes back to what the culture is per team, per department, per organization. If you're part of an organization that says nobody's sending emails after 5 p.m., then that's not an expectation for you to do that. So it depends.
I've had definitely some interesting conversations with different companies and groups and stuff around that, because, you know, of course, people now maybe don't have that 1 to 2 hour commute in the morning, but now they just start work or in front of their computer now sooner at 7 a.m. now instead of being on the road or whatever. And then, you know, there's an expectation sometimes out there that's been a growing expectation out there when you send in an email from, you know, from client to client, whatever it might be, 8 p.m. and, you know, why haven't I got a response? So it's interesting. It is about setting boundaries and you know, establishing expectations, etc. Right?
It is. And just to elaborate on that a little bit more, if we think about the past 3 years, and there's studies to back this up, the rate of stress that Canadians have reported sustained levels of stress from March of 2022, even up until December of 2022, it's alarming at how consistent the month-over-month stress levels have been the same for more than 50% of Canadians. And if we've been in that fight or flight response mode for that long, it's not sustainable. And so I would say in the beginning that the issue wasn't necessarily productivity. The issues that most HR executives were focusing on was burnout, levels of burnout. And we saw that key focus on mental health, I would say about 4 or 5 months into the pandemic. It wasn't productivity that was the issue. Everyone adapted to their technology pretty fast. It was the burnout, the levels of burnout. So that level of work, just because you're not commuting, it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be, you just shouldn't be, because you can't for that long. So I think we're seeing everyone slowly come out of that. And to me, a good indication of that is the fact that so many people are switching jobs. They've recognized what they want out of a job, and people are moving around. So lots of indications on that.
So even more important to kind of, build a culture within the company or your team to, that you support and respect each other's boundaries, et cetera, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I have a question here. How do you see the future of office furniture business? There's lots of opportunities. If we understand and then that's the good news. There's still human beings, even if we use technology, we're going to need something to use that technology in, or a place to learn that technology, a place to interact. And I'm going to that extreme example of if we were all in the metaverse and we were doing this presentation that way, you're still going to need a chair to sit on. You're still going to need a desk. You're still going to need the tools that you would need to use for that. Ultimately, being aware of how things are shifting and evolving and staying ahead of that and understanding what that balance is between that technology propelling things forward and the human need. There's still a lot of room for furniture and design in that space.
Yeah, and it speaks to how busy the design community has been, in these past, 6 to 12 months. It's like off the charts of year-over-year increase of activity for the professional interior design community, which means there's a lot of planning, a lot of discussion and stuff still happening, obviously, within the workspace.
Yeah, definitely. Great questions, guys.
Good. Any other questions? Or we could just stare at each other for another 15 minutes, whatever. Yeah.
I have one.
Please.
So I'm just wondering, we are a remote business completely. What are like your top 3 things that we could do to improve our company culture?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I'll give you a few of them. I actually have a whole other presentation on this, and that's my CEU, which hopefully I can come out and do in person because it's a lot better in person. So one of the things that I talk about with, I'll give you 2 important ones. The first one is just keeping that channel of communication open, because we're all going through so many different perceptions of how we're feeling day to day and where we think things are going. And so even if it's just giving that feedback to leadership or having those conversations with your peers, if we're not talking about that casually, it becomes very isolating in what you feel your perspective is, especially for someone who may have just joined the company. So having that open, comfortable, safe way to communicate, be it anonymous, be it a mentor, whatever that looks like, somebody that you can either speak to or a channel of communication between the team and potentially the leadership. The other thing is having a regular way where you're interacting outside of work. So that could be a virtual interaction, it could be in person, maybe it's just once a year, but having something that helps to create those memories that are not just about work, but they're about people. That's what you end up talking about. That's how you relate to people. And then a third one is if you have a new team member joining, having a very robust onboarding program, because first impressions make a huge difference. And there's, I was reading something and it said that the first impressions can have a lasting impact as much as like the first 6 months, and can show a perception of up to a year of that person joining a company. So for example, if I had a bad onboarding process, that would affect my perception of the company for up to a year is what the article was saying. So those would be just some of the things that that I would recommend from a workplace culture, especially trying to create that cohesion and camaraderie from a remote perspective.
I have a follow-up question. Do you have like an example of what a good onboarding structure looks like?
I have examples of what not to do. And everyone that's on Global is going to laugh at this because I actually joined during the pandemic. And everyone's laughing, I can see your faces. And I didn't get to meet the team for at least a year and a half. So one of the things that I would say are important is having individual time set up with each person to be able to provide that individual an opportunity to ask questions and learn in a safe way without feeling like they're burdening their teammates or their boss or whomever that is. That's one of the that's one of the main things that from an onboarding perspective, you want to give them insight into the workplace culture and you want to give them a safe place to learn. Those two things really matter. And showing them the basics, like where do you typically go get your printing done? Where do you get this? How do you get all of these things? There's a lot more I can talk about from that perspective. That would take probably another 15 minutes, but I would say those are the top things. And we can definitely have a conversation following up with that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Roopa, and yeah, certainly look forward to the next face-to-face CEU. You know, definitely that's 20 in the sights for 2023. So look forward to meeting people more face-to-face in these coming months. But again, we'll wind it down now and give people back a few minutes of their time. Really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much, Roopa, for your expertise and professionalism on this topic. Thank you for joining the Chase webinar series. And we're going to ask everyone, if you could, when you get the survey that you're going to see in the next hour, to give us your feedback, what we can do to continue to make these events more relevant, more valuable, more you know, on point to what you're looking for. So looking, you know, these kind of topics today are huge. And actually, this is how we chose one of these this topic and sought out Roopa, because there was comments from previous surveys. I just also want to remind people for our next event is a BIFMA CEU event, and that's in 2 weeks' time, February 16th, called Why Standards Matter. So you can go to chaseoffice.ca/events to register for that. It's going to be a great one. So on that, thank you again to the Global Furniture Group and Roopa and the entire team, and wish everyone a happy Thursday.